now that I realize I have to leave and I've decided on where I want to go, there could be things that come in my way, right? So these things that come in your way, these are called intervening obstacles. They're literally just, I start with my origin. So right here, this is where I live. I got to leave. Some things are going to happen on my journey, whether I'm going, if I'm going far away, more things are going to happen on my journey. And then there's my destination. There's reasons to stay somewhere in the middle, right? I left Syria. I wanted to go to Germany. I got to Greece and I decided to stay there, or I had to stay there, right? Those could all be true. I got to, I left, I left my village in Brazil and I moved to the big city in Brazil. And then the plan was to get on a plane to New York, but I couldn't because I couldn't get a visa. So I stayed in the big city. I'm still a migrant. I didn't make it to my final destination, either because I decided not to or because I couldn't do it. So, for example, an economic reason, a migrant could get a job. So you're on your way to your destination, you get a job to save some money, and you decide, what, I'm going to stay here. I have a job, things are okay. Or you fall in love, you get married, you have people, you become part of their family, so you stay. There's no reason to leave anymore, right? So I didn't know I was going to stop in Greece. I was going to keep going to Germany, but why go to Germany when now I, have basically a family in Greece? Excuse me, political. Can't get a visa. Visas are super hard to get and very bureaucratic. So if you can't get a visa, you go as far as you can and then you might get stuck. Or just environmental, right? There's a sea. I got to get across this ocean. I got to get across these mountains, this river, whatever. So if I can't, I might just stay where I'm at. Okay. So intervening obstacles, that's an important term to remember. Like I said, human geography is just a lot of terms. So if you can remember these terms, you're good to go. Okay, so there are models that come up throughout all of human geography. In populations, there were the pyramids and the DTM and the epidemiological transition model. I think that was what it was. In migrations, this is one of them. This is Ravenstein's laws of migrations. So there's basically several different things that are generally true. This is all generalizations. Okay, so there are plenty of stories and cases that don't meet these laws. Laws sounds a little strict, but if you compile, all this data and you look at it, this is what tends to be true. And these are good to remember because you can make other assertions about patterns based on these. So if you get a question, for example, on a test that's asking you about like consequences of migrations, you can make generalizations about the consequences based on these things. So I'll show you examples of that. So most migrants travel short distances. This is because people don't generally want to go really far with all their stuff, right? That's hard. So, for example, if you're escaping from the hurricane, you aren't necessarily going to move to California. You're going to move to northern Florida or Georgia or, just a little bit further away. You don't need to go super far. Even if you're escaping from Syria, most Syrian migrants that left went to the countries right around, right? Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, because it's easier to get, closer to you than it is to go far. So most migrants travel short distances. Plenty of migrants go further, but most stay relatively close. That's why the country that has the most immigrants coming to the United States is Mexico, because Mexico is super close to us. So that makes sense. All right, number 2. Migrants who travel far usually settle in cities. So if you are going to go really far away to another country, another continent, typically these migrants will stay in a big city. You don't typically travel far away to settle in a remote area. Most migrants go to cities. Most migrations have several steps between origin and destination. This is why you have those intervening obstacles. Even if you're going someplace close, there's typically steps that you will have to take to get there. And then you might not stay. You might not, make it through all those steps. You might decide to stay someplace. But typically there's a lot of like, they'll go, for example, a migrant typically won't just go straight from origin to destination, right? They're not buying one-way tickets that go direct. They're instead have to walk a certain length of time, take a train, take a bus, take a plane, catch a ride somewhere. There's a lot of different variations of it, and it's typically complicated. All right, number 4, most migrations in history have been rural to urban. So just as our history is that of movement, people used to live in rural societies. Now most people live in a city. Cities tend to just have more opportunities for jobs, for education. So most people live in cities. Each migration flow triggers a counter migration flow. And to keep in mind here, it doesn't mean that they are equal. So while we have a lot of migrants coming from Mexico to the United States, there are also a good number of people who go from the United States to Mexico that move there, that will retire in Mexico. It's not the same number, but it's a counter migration. It's like once one thing opens up, one connection between two places, then people will move both ways, always. And it's not always it's not always equal, but people will move both ways. Most migrants are younger adults, so they're usually between like 20, 45 years old. Obviously, there are younger migrants that travel alone even. And then, of course, there are older migrants, but usually the migrants are younger, right? It's hard. It's not easy to travel long distances. So this is your like prime time to do it. And then finally, people who travel internationally. So if you're going to another country, these tend to be male. The idea is that the male will go ahead, then bring the family later. While migrants within a country tend to be female. This is because females will tend to like move to where their husbands are, for example, or move to where their families are. So inside of a country tends to be female, outside of the country tends to be male.